In the village of Longonot, there was a young lady named Elena. Her world was a canva of happiness until that fateful afternoon when she received a bad news that her parents got a road accident and died on spot. It was hard for her to accept the reality of being an orphan, and not just orphan, but orphan of both parents. In the burial day, relatives and neighbors showed up and paid their last respect. After the burial, everyone went to their homes and left her hopeless in the house. One of her uncle took her and promised to help her in any way, and as much as he could. As his uncle was talking to her and trying to encourage her, his wife pushed the door with a lot of effort while shouting in a harsh voice, "Where is she? She is not staying in this house." His uncle, Mr. Sam, tried to explain the condition of Eleanor to his wife, but Mrs. Adele didn't want to hear any word. The only thing that Mrs. Adele, Elena's auntie, wanted to see was Elena moving out of the house. When Elena heard their voices arguing the whole day, she went to her room and wrote a letter to his uncle, and then she took her favorite picture, which they took when his parents were alive. At night, when the whole village was wrapped in a blanket of silence and everyone was asleep, she made a decision and slipped out of his uncle's house. She walked with fear, without knowing where she was going to. On her way, Eleanor found a shop around and sheltered herself for a night. In the morning, she moved out in a hurry and continued with her journey. As she was walking, she met one of her close friends, Tila, who they used to play with her in the village. Tila asked her how she was going on. There is when Eleanor explained everything. Mr. Sam woke up very early in the morning and went to the shop to buy breakfast for the family. When he came back, he didn't see the face of Eleanor in the house. He went to look for her in her room, but he didn't find anyone in the room. The only thing that Mr. Sam found was a letter on the table. He opened the letter and started reading it. The only thing that Elena wanted from him was to leave a happy life and never look for her, because he will not find her. His uncle started crying because he had failed as a guardian to take care of her. Seeing her plight, Tila invited her to stay with her family. Eleanor gratefully accepted Tila's offer and moved in. When she entered in that house, Mr. John Taylor's father promised to take Elena back to school. Elena was so happy to go back to school so that she could fulfill his parents' dream. One day when Eleanor was mopping the floor, she heard a voice coming from Tila's parent bedroom. When she went, she found Mr. John laying on the bed. Eleanor was afraid because she thought it was Mrs. Leah who was calling her. Mr. John forced and raped Eleanor. Then he told her to put on her cloth, and she should never tell anyone what he did. Elena went back to her work with a lot of pain. She cried the whole day. When Mrs. Leah came back from the market, she found Eleanor in the kitchen cooking. She was so mad and started beating her and claiming she was lazy. She took the hot water that Eleanor had boiled and poured to her. Elena finished cooking the food with a lot of pain and went to serve them. She was not allowed to touch the food until everyone in that family eats. Elena stands in front of them with a lot of pain, waiting for them to finish eating so that she could collect dirty dishes and wash them. Mr. John continued with his bad behavior until one day Elena decided to run away. As she was escaping, Mrs. Leah started screaming, saying Elena was a thief. Villagers collaborated and beat Elena until she started bleeding. Mrs. Leah, on the other hand, was cheering as those men were beating Elena. When those men realized that Eleanor could not move even a hand, they thought they have killed her, and everybody ran away, including Mrs. Leah. Eleanor remained on the ground lying unconscious. young handsome man who usually come back late from work saw someone lying on the ground. At first, he was afraid because he thought Eleanor had died, or maybe it was a trap from thieves. As he moved closer, he saw Eleanor bleeding and breathing in an abnormal way. He took Eleanor and rushed her to the hospital. Eleanor was treated well, and Peter paid all the bill for her. Elena thanks John for saving her life and taking care of her in the hospital. For the first time, Elena met someone who cared for her after the death of her parents. Peter asked her what had happened to her and how she found herself in that situation. There is when Eleanor explained everything to him. Peter decided to take Elena to his house because Elena had nowhere to go. He took Elena to school, paid her school fees until she graduated, and opened for her a business. On the other hand, Peter had a big company and became a big businessman. After staying for so long and knowing each other well, Peter decided to marry Elena because she was successful and a beautiful woman with all the qualification. They lived a happy life and they were blessed with 2 kids.